Welcome back to our detailed knife making series. In our last video, we got our blade ground and got it finished up to the final finish. Our edges have been profiled. We've come in here and cut our guard shoulders. Now we need to start fitting the guard. I've got a piece of material left over from the billet that this knife was made from. So we're going to start working on that right now. So now that we got our flats finished on a ricasso, we can go ahead and start making our guard. You want to make sure that this is the final finish before you start making the guard, unless you're putting a recess all the way around that ricasso for the guard to sit up against. So this has to be the final finish. The first thing we want to do is get a measurement on the thickness of our ricasso and right here where the guard is going to meet the shoulders. First measurement we're going to get is right up where our guard slides up to the ricasso. And we're going to come here and get the measurement where the guard fits up against the shoulders. Now before I cut the slot in this guard, I need to go clean this test edge off of it, make sure it's flat, and cut it to length. So let's do that right now. I usually do this with my mill, but I did it with a disc sander to show you could do it with that. You just need to make sure it's pretty flat all the way across the full thickness. But what I've done is I went ahead and marked our guard slot. Now you can do this a couple ways. You can do it with drill bits, drill you some holes in here, and then connect the holes with files. That takes quite a while, but I've done a bunch of them that way and you can too. But what I'm going to do is use my mill to cut this slot. As far as the width goes, I'll adjust that with the mill to get it about 3 to 4 thousandths under what the guard fit is. One other thing we need to talk about is your blade tang. Now you need to make sure this tang is tapered from front all the way to the end. Now you'll be cutting this depending on whether you thread it and what have you and how long your handle is. But it needs to be tapered from the guard fit all the way back, both ways. Otherwise, you'll be trying to fit your guard on there and you're going to run into high spots and you start filing material off your guard and then it's got a gap up here when it gets fit. You don't want that. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to mill all the way through, get my width right, and then I'm going to come back with a larger mill and cut it down to about 50 thousandths left on the bottom side. This will become the face of the guard. I'll only be fitting up about 50 thousandths. You'll see when we get there. We've got our end mill set up over our center mark. One of the things you want to make sure, no matter if you're milling or drilling your guard slot, it needs to be flat. It needs to be square with your spindle. That's why I have it on parallel bars, just like I'm going to cut or mill anything, even in a drill press or what have you. Your guard needs to be flat, your slot needs to be straight, otherwise it'll be crooked when you fit it up on the tang of your knife. So we're going to go ahead and get this slot cut. I'm going to cut all the way through, then come back with a bigger end mill and cut it down and leave about 50 thousandths left to fit up on the tang of the knife. So I went and knocked the burrs off of it. As you can see, looking at the back side, you can see that lip in there. This is what I was talking about by cutting out the back side of the guard larger than our actual size, leaving about a 50 thousandths lip down in there to fit up. This means I have less work to do to make this guard fit and do the press fit. That's all you need. For now, we got to come in here and cut these corners before we try to adjust anything on this slot. We want to get those corners cut, because right now that's what's hitting on our tang. But you want to cut those corners before you do any adjustment to make your final press fit up here. We're going to take our file guide, put it on here, take some needle files, and cut these corners square. I'm going to set my file guide up right on the edge inset about 2,000. That way when I go to tune up the sides, I've got a little play there. We'll have to make a little adjustment after we get it snug. All right, and then we'll take it over to the vise. Okay, as I come in here and cut this corner against this carbide, I don't want to get over here and start cutting over here. You can take a file, knock off the cutting edge on one side and a bottom side or a top side. That way you don't cut in places you don't want to cut. This gap's wide enough I'm not worried about getting over here, but I have files that are done that way. I'm gonna stay over here against this carbide, start cutting that corner. So now we're going to just do a little test to see where we're at. That tells me we're about 4/1000 from where we need to be, which is right up against that shoulder. But before we do any adjustment, we're going to come in here and roll this slot on the top and the bottom. That way, it'll fit to contour these shoulders. Let's do another test fit. See where we're at. Looks like we're a couple thousandths from where we need to be. So the next step is we're going to hammer it on. See where it might be hitting in those shoulders, where we might have to clean it up a little more. So let's go hammer it on. Okay, you've probably seen these before. It's just a piece of pipe mashed down on one end that'll slide up over the tang up against a piece of leather where I can hammer the guard on. Now if I'm doing something like copper or brass, some kind of soft material, I'll use one like this, piece of wood, because I don't want to damage or bend the soft material. So right now we're going to drive this guard down up against the shoulders. You can see here that we just got one little spot touching with our guard shoulders, barely up here. Our guard shoulders should leave an impression in there when they're all the way down, meaning that we got a little gap at the top and bottom of our guard shoulders. What's causing that is it's hitting down in here somewhere in the radius of that guard shoulder. I can see a spot there, a spot right there. So we got to go in there and file a little bit of that out and then hammer it back on. Okay, our guard's fitting pretty nicely. Next thing we're going to work on is making a template for our guard shape. And what I do is make it out of cardstock. Then I can put it on the guard, trace it out, make it symmetrical on each side. They'll look like that. Basically, they're half of the guard. So we're going to make that right now. So I went ahead and cut the tang to length and just put my guard on here because the next step, before I finish this guard out, I want to start working on the handle, get the handle fit to the tang, then I can finish profiling this guard. This guard is a Damascus guard and as well as the blade, so I will need to finish it out, get it cleaned up so that I can heat treat and etch it. If I don't heat treat it and etch it, it won't come out looking right. You need to heat treat your Damascus to make it etch right. So what I've done, I went ahead and made a template for the handle. Then I've got a piece of spalted maple stabilized, and I've got a piece of ironwood on the end here. I'm gonna put the handle up here, figure out where our center is, and get our slot cut for our tang. So let's get to it. I'm gonna connect these two holes with the same size bit using a hand drill, but I'm not gonna get in here and do this. If I do that, I run the risk of causing an issue up here when I start shaping the handle that I have gap up here. I want the tang to fit tight, so what I'm gonna do is come in here and I'm gonna put the bit in and push down, put the bit in and push up. The thickest part is up here closest to the end here. Then it gets down to nothing. I want to have a tight fit in here. To make longer end mill bits that, depending on how long your tang is, make this job a lot quicker. Now we've got our holes connected all the way to the end. Now I'm going to use a couple tools called broaches. I'm going to use this one first. That way I can square it up and make sure that the side walls are even. Then I'll come in here with this broach and fine tune it. Now there's several ways to do handle fit ups, but I'm trying to keep this build simple. But if I was doing a spacer build, I would use lineup pins in my guard with my spacer and into my handle material. Another way is you come in here, pour epoxy, let that epoxy start setting up. Before it gets hard, pull it back out, and then you've got a slot that doesn't move when you put your knife in the handle material. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna go cut this handle out, put it back on, get it square, drill our pin hole, then put it on and pin it, make sure everything's good and square. Then when we epoxy it, it'll be just fine. I hope you're enjoying this series on detailed knife making. But for this video, we're out of time. In the next video, we're going to get our handle profiled and finished, as well as the guard, get everything etched, get our logo done, get her epoxied, and we'll have our final product. You can see the previous video right over here in the corner. Thank you for watching.